You know, you are lying awake at 2 in the morning and your heart is just racing. Your stomach feels like it's tied in a knot.
Oh, yeah. We have all been there.
Right. And the cause of all this intense, entirely physical distress, someone left you on red for, like, 4 hours.
Or maybe you agreed to cover a shift for a coworker, a favor you absolutely did not have the bandwidth for.
Exactly. Simply because the thought of them being momentarily annoyed with you just felt dangerous. So why does a silent phone or a mild look of disapproval physically hurt us?
Well, it feels like an overreaction, right? But as a psychologist who researches the mechanisms of the human mind, I can tell you it is entirely by design.
Because we tend to treat emotional pain as this abstract philosophical problem. We think we are just being too sensitive.
Yeah, we do. But the pain of feeling disliked is as real and as biologically calculated as a broken bone.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking in today's deep dive. We have a massive stack of psychological and evolutionary research in front of us, and we are going to figure out the actual mechanics behind our terror of being disliked.
Yes, we're covering a lot. Everything from the biological pain of ostracism to rejection-sensitive dysphoria.
Right, and how our self-esteem operates like a dashboard gauge.
Hmm.
Plus, we'll get into how to use Adlerian psychology to sort of reprogram this entire system.
I think the best place to start, really, is by looking at our evolutionary blueprints. Because early humans did not survive out on the savannah alone.
Right, you needed the group.
Exactly. You relied entirely on the collective for food, protection, shelter. If you became a burden, or if the group decided they simply didn't like you were ostracized.
Which meant you were dead.
Basically, yes. In that environment, ostracism wasn't just a blow to your ego. It was literally a death sentence.
See, I struggle a bit with the whole, it's just biology argument.
Yeah.
Because it can feel like a get-out-of-jail-free card for all our modern anxieties. I mean, we aren't hunting and gathering anymore.
We aren't, but our brains haven't updated their operating systems. Evolution is remarkably efficient.
What do you mean by efficient?
Well, when early social mammals started forming complex groups, nature needed a mechanism to warn the organism when it was in danger of being pushed out.
Okay.
But building an entirely new neural pathway for social distress, that would require massive biological resources. So evolution took a shortcut.
It just repurposed something else.
Exactly. It piggybacked our social emotions directly onto the pre-existing system for physical harm.
Wait, so the overlap isn't just...
It's not just poetic, no.
So when we say a harsh criticism stung or our feelings are hurt, our brain is actually running that through the physical pain center.
It is running through the exact same circuitry. The neuroscientist Jack Panksepp did some really groundbreaking work on this.
Oh, I saw that in the sources.
Yeah, he showed how the mammalian brain processes social separation using the exact same neurochemicals involved in physical pain and addiction.
Wow.
And then researchers Eisenberger and Williams took this a step further with humans using a procedure called cyberball.
Right, the fMRI study, where they put people in the scanners.
Yes. So they put participants into a brain scanner and had them play a virtual game of catch with two other avatars on a screen.
And the participants believed real people were controlling the avatars, right?
Yes, they did. And after a few minutes, the avatars just stopped throwing the ball to the participant.
So they're just completely socially excluded from a totally meaningless virtual game.
Exactly, and their brains registered that as a physical injury. The anterior cingulate cortex just lit up immediately.
And that's the pain center.
Right, that is the region of the brain that registers the distress and suffering of an actual physical wound. Evolution didn't want you to just intellectually realize you were excluded.
It needed you to really feel it.
Intensely and physically, so you would panic and immediately correct your behavior to get back into the group's good graces.
Okay, so if our baseline fear of rejection is functioning as a biological alarm, how do we actually track the threat before it hits? Because we obviously aren't sitting around consciously calculating our social standing every second of the day.
No, we aren't doing it consciously, but our subconscious is absolutely obsessed with it. And this brings in Mark Leary's sociometer theory.
Which completely reframes how we understand self-esteem, right?
It really does. Historically, psychology has treated self-esteem as a measure of inherent personal worth.
Like if you have low self-esteem, people just assume you don't realize your own value.
Right. But Leary argued that self-esteem has nothing to do with objective self-worth. It is simply an internal gauge, a sociometer.
It makes me think of the gas gauge on a car dashboard.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Because having low self-esteem doesn't mean my engine is broken or my car is worthless. It just means my dashboard is flashing a bright red warning light telling me my My social connection tank is running dangerously low.
That analogy holds up perfectly. When you experience a drop in self-esteem, it's an indicator warning you of relational devaluation.
So the gauge drops, and your brain produces emotional distress.
Exactly, specifically to motivate you to refill the tank. It is telling you to go apologize to a friend or conform to the group's expectations or just find a new tribe that values you more.
That makes intuitive sense for criticism, because the sources talk about FNE, the fear of negative evaluation.
Right, the paralyzing worry that someone is going to judge us harshly.
Yeah, but I want to spend a minute on the other side of this, because the research also highlights FPE, the fear of positive evaluation.
Yes, FPE.
Why on earth would our dashboard flash a warning light when someone gives us a compliment?
Well, FPE is deeply counterintuitive, I know. But as a psychologist, I see it all the time. It's incredibly common.
Really? Even with positive feedback?
Yes. When a person with high fear of positive evaluation receives praise or, say, gets a promotion at work, they don't feel joy. They feel a sudden crushing weight of expectation.
Oh, because now the bar has been raised.
Precisely. A compliment signals that the group now sees you as highly competent, and with high expectations comes a much steeper drop if you fail.
Right, if you are the golden child of the office, one single mistake suddenly feels catastrophic.
Exactly. Furthermore, it triggers massive imposter syndrome. The person feels terrified that the positive evaluation is based on a facade.
And any day now, they're going to be exposed as a fraud.
Right, which would lead to an even more dramatic rejection.
So, whether you are being criticized or praised, the sociometer is just spinning out of control. It's constantly warning you that you are one step away from being exiled.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like.
So what happens when someone's wiring is just permanently stuck on that setting? Like, is there a point where that helpful warning light just blinds you completely?
There absolutely is. And it leads us into a concept called rejection-sensitive dysphoria, or RSD.
And this is Dr. William Dodson's work, right?
Yes, he pioneered a lot of the clinical understanding around this. Now, while it is not an official diagnosis in the DSM-5, it is a highly prevalent phenomenon.
The sources mentioned it's particularly observed in individuals with ADHD.
Yes, and it shares significant overlap with the autistic community as well.
How does RSD actually differ from just normal social anxiety or standard fear of negative evaluation?
The main differentiator is the sheer intensity of the physiological response. RSD is an extreme, near-catastrophic emotional reaction to the perception of being rejected.
Or even just criticized, right?
Right, or even just falling short of internal standards. People struggling with RSD describe the feeling not as sadness or worry, but as a devastating physical blow.
Wow. Where does that come from?
Clinically, we often trace its origins back to childhood environments characterized by conditional acceptance.
Conditional acceptance meaning you only get affection if you earn it.
Exactly. You are loved when you bring home straight A's or when you sit quietly and don't inconvenience the adults.
So the child learns love is basically transactional.
Right. When a child's environment teaches them that affection can be withdrawn the second they are inconvenient, their nervous system learns that human connection is fundamentally unsafe.
And volatile.
Yes. And this constant state of threat activates the body's survival mechanisms. We often hear about the classic responses to trauma, fight, flight, and freeze.
Right.
But the sources highlight the critical fourth F in this model, which is fawn.
Fawning, which in everyday language we just call people-pleasing.
Exactly. And people-pleasing is frequently misunderstood. People think it's a personality trait, like someone is just naturally accommodating or exceptionally nice.
But it's not.
No. In the context of RSD and conditional acceptance, fawning is a learned survival reflex. The family therapist, Virginia Satter, classified this as the placator stance.
Placator.
Yes, the subconscious logic is entirely based on threat mitigation. The brain says, if you are happy, I am safe.
Oh, wow. So to look at the neurobiology of this, the person who says yes to a ridiculous request isn't actually doing it out of kindness.
No, not usually. Their amygdala is sounding an alarm, and fawning is the mechanism they use to quiet that alarm.
So by anticipating your needs, agreeing with your opinions, erasing their own boundaries.
They are actively downregulating their nervous system's panic response.
That makes so much sense.
And every time they successfully appease someone, the immediate drop in anxiety acts as a massive psychological reward.
So the brain learns that suppressing their own needs prevented abandonment.
Right, which just reinforces the fawning loop all over again.
The sources tie this directly to attachment styles as well, which creates this really tragic irony.
It is deeply tragic, yeah. because our early attachment blueprints dictate how we perceive compassion later in life.
Like with anxious attachment.
Exactly. Individuals with an anxious attachment style often exhibit a profound fear of self-compassion.
Wait, they're afraid of being nice to themselves?
Yes. They view being kind to themselves as dangerous, as a sort of self-indulgent weakness.
Oh, because they need to stay vigilant.
Right. They defensively maintain a brutal inner critic because they subconsciously believe that demanding perfection from themselves is the only way to prevent others from leaving.
It's like a preemptive strike. Like if I punish myself first and work twice as hard, you won't have a reason to reject me.
That's exactly the logic. Conversely, those with an avoidant attachment style, who often grew up with caregivers who were emotionally unreliable, they develop an intense fear of compassion from others.
So if someone is actually nice to them, it freaks them out.
Totally. When someone demonstrates genuine kindness or offers help, the avoidantly attached brain processes it as a threat.
Because it feels like manipulation.
Yes, or a trap that will inevitably lead to disappointment once they let their guard down.
Okay, let's follow the logic here for a second. If a person is terrified of rejection, constantly monitoring their dashboard and relying on fawning to stay safe, if they do experience the ultimate fear, like if they're actually excluded, it stands to reason they would go into hyper-fawn mode, right?
You would think so.
Like they would act incredibly cooperative and pro-social to desperately win the group back.
That is the logical assumption. It seems like the most adaptive way to reestablish a severed social bond. But the psychological research reveals a massive behavioral paradox here.
Really, what do they actually do?
Well, according to the temporal need-threat model proposed by Kip Williams, the experience of social exclusion unfolds in 3 distinct stages.
Okay, what are they?
First is the reflexive stage, which is the immediate agony of rejection. Then the reflective stage, where the individual attempts to cope and recover. And finally, the resignation stage, characterized by helplessness and depression.
Let's focus on that middle stage for a second, the reflective coping. If they aren't fawning to get back in, what are they doing?
Laboratory studies consistently demonstrate that socially excluded individuals show significantly decreased cooperative behavior and a sharp increase in aggression.
Wait, aggression? They don't try to help the group.
No, they lash out at it.
I genuinely struggle to buy the idea that aggression is a biological default here. I mean, if I'm ostracized by my tribe out on the savannah, lashing out at the people who just kicked me out guarantees I get left for dead.
It does seem counterproductive.
Right. The tribe will just kill me or walk away faster. How can aggression possibly be an adaptive response when you're desperate for friends?
It seems illogical until you look at the underlying mechanisms driving it. There are 2 primary forces at work here. The first is emotional numbness, which is clinically referred to as analgesia.
Analgesia, like a painkiller.
Exactly. Remember the overlap between physical and social pain we talked about?
Yeah.
When an animal suffers a catastrophic physical trauma, like having its leg caught in a trap, the brain floods the body with endogenous opioids.
To temporarily numb the pain so the animal can escape.
Right. It's a shock response. And a massive social rejection triggers the exact same shock response. The person's emotional system goes completely numb.
But how does that lead to aggression?
Well, think about empathy. The ability to care about how others feel requires emotional resonance. You have to be able to internally simulate another person's feeling.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
If your own emotional system is chemically shut down and numb, you literally cannot generate the resonance required for empathy. And without empathy, prosocial behavior collapses.
Okay, I understand why they wouldn't be helpful then. They are numb. But numbness implies withdrawal. It implies curling up in a ball.
Right.
Actively attacking someone takes a lot of energy. Why go on the offensive?
That brings in the second mechanism. Aggression acts as a tactic of social influence.
Social influence.
Yes. When you are rejected, your perceived social value is decimated. The group has essentially stated you do not matter.
Right.
By lashing out, the rejected individual is forcefully demonstrating that they cannot simply be ignored or devalued without consequence.
Oh, wow.
They are making their presence felt and ensuring their threats are credible. It is a desperate attempt to assert power and force compliance when affection has failed.
It's literally the wounded animal in the trap. You walk up to a dog that's injured, and you think it wants to be rescued and comforted.
Yes, exactly.
But the second you reach out, it snaps its jaws and tries to bite you, because it is in agony and terrified of sustaining more damage.
That is a perfect analogy. The tragedy of the aggression paradox is that it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy of isolation.
Because they push everyone away.
Right. The individual desperately wants connection, but their trauma response dictates that they must wait for an absolute guaranteed sign of safety before they open up.
But because they are projecting hostility and numbness.
No one is willing to offer them that safety.
We've mapped out a fairly grim reality here today.
We really have.
I mean, we are biologically wired to obsess over our social standing. Childhood conditioning traps us in a cycle of fawning. And if we actually get rejected, our brains turn us into aggressive misanthropes.
It sounds bleak when you summarize it like that.
So how does a modern human short-circuit this? How do we stop the dashboard from dictating our lives?
This is where we turn to Alfred Adler's individual psychology, which has seen a massive resurgence lately through the framework presented in the book The Courage to Be Disliked.
Yes, I've heard so much about that book.
Adlerian psychology offers a profoundly practical tool designed specifically to cut through this evolutionary noise and trauma conditioning. It is called the separation of tasks.
The separation of tasks. Okay, how does that practically dismantle the fawning response?
By forcing you to draw a hard, objective boundary between your responsibilities and someone else's. In any interpersonal conflict or point of friction, Adler says you must ask one defining question.
What's the question?
Who ultimately bears the consequences of this choice?
Okay, let's put this into a complex, messy, real-world scenario. Not just a coworker asking for a favor, but something with emotional weight.
Sure, give me an example.
Let's say you have a parent who guilt trips you every single time you don't visit on a Sunday, even though Sunday is your only day to rest and recover from a brutal work week.
Oh, that is a classic boundary conflict.
Yeah.
So if we apply the separation of tasks, we start by defining your task. Your task is to manage your own physical and mental health so you can function.
Right.
Therefore, deciding to stay home and rest is your task. And you complete it by politely and firmly stating your boundary.
But what about the parent's reaction? You know, the sighing, the passive-aggressive text messages, the cold shoulder.
Well, whose emotions are those?
The parents.
Exactly. Therefore, processing that disappointment and managing those emotions is 100% their task.
Oh, I see.
The chronic people pleaser believes it is their responsibility to manage the parent's emotions, to preemptively soothe them by abandoning their own need for rest.
Which is fawning.
Right. Adlerian psychology argues that trying to manage someone else's emotions is actually an arrogant intrusion into their task.
Arrogant.
Yes, because you are robbing them of the opportunity to learn how to self-soothe and handle disappointment.
But the societal conditioning against this is so strong. Applying that logic to a parent or a romantic partner who is upset you won't skip the gym to hang out with them, it feels cold.
It does at first.
It feels inherently selfish to say, well, your anger is your problem.
It feels cold to a nervous system that was trained to fawn for survival. But Adler proposes that this separation is actually the highest form of interpersonal respect.
How so?
You are respecting the other person's autonomy and trusting their capacity to handle their own life. It is not about lacking empathy or being intentionally cruel.
It's about setting boundaries.
It is about accepting a fundamental psychological truth. Being disliked is the unavoidable, non-negotiable price of freedom.
Wow.
If you live your life constantly trying to manipulate everyone's perception of you so they never feel let down, you are not living your own life. You are living as a hostage to their tasks.
That is incredibly powerful. So to synthesize all of this, if you are listening to this right now and you are exhausted from carrying the weight of everyone else's potential opinions of you, recognize what is actually happening.
Absolutely.
Your fear of being disliked is not a character flaw. It is an ancient survival mechanism that kept your ancestors alive on the savannah. That feeling of low self-esteem is just a dashboard gauge doing its job.
And your instinct to people pleasers is likely a childhood reflex? It was a brilliant coping mechanism your brain developed to keep you safe when you were vulnerable.
But you are not on the savannah, and you are no longer a helpless child. By practicing the separation of tasks, you can acknowledge the alarm without letting it dictate your behavior.
And this brings up a crucial realization. Dismantling this fear isn't about simply feeling better. It is about reclaiming your resources.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a different way to look at that alarm bell.
Think about this. If your brain wasn't constantly burning so much energy trying to predict, manage, and worry about everyone else's opinion of you, what incredible things could you build, create, or experience with all that freed up mental power tomorrow? Try an experiment. Let someone be mildly annoyed with you.
Say no to a minor request.
Or don't add the exclamation point and the smiley face to the email. Let the alarm ring, sit with the physical discomfort of their annoyance, and watch how absolutely nothing dangerous
Yeah,
happens.
you won't be exiled.
No, you won't be left for dead. You will just be free.